Some life lessons arrive in disguise, waiting for the right moment to reveal truths that cannot be ignored. It was a hot afternoon in the bustling city of Sunville. The sun's rays were shining brightly on the luxury cars parked in front of the Luxury Motors building, which Snoopy Dogg had recently acquired. He parked his SUV discreetly at the back of the parking lot, away from prying eyes. Dressed in a gray t-shirt, simple, worn jeans, and sneakers, his choice of clothing was deliberate. He wanted to see how his dealership worked. The well-lit, air-conditioned showroom offered a refreshing contrast to the scorching heat outside. The smell of new leather and fresh air hung in the air near the reception desk. The air near the reception desk was filled with the sounds of a group of employees chatting casually and laughing. However, as soon as Snoop entered, the atmosphere changed completely. The employees immediately started judging him, clearly surprised by his presence. On the other side of the room, Brittany's manager noticed his presence with determined steps and impeccable posture. She approached, her well-fitted blazer and high heels denoting her authority. With a portfolio in hand and a rehearsed smile, she approached him. "Excuse me," Brittany began firmly. "I can help you." "I'm just looking," Snoop replied calmly, indicating the cars lined up with a slight movement. Brittany's eyes scanned him from head to toe, her smile growing more tense. "Are you thinking of buying something?" she asked, a hint of doubt in her voice. "Something like that," he replied, a slight smile on his face. "Well," she continued, tilting her head slightly, "our clientele is quite specific." "I can help you," Brittany began with a firm tone. "I'm just looking," Snoop replied calmly, indicating the cars lined up with a slight movement. Brittany's eyes scanned him from head to toe, her smile becoming more tense. "Are you thinking of buying something?" she asked, a hint of doubt in her voice. "Something like that," he replied, a slight smile on his face. "Well, our clientele is quite specific," she continued, tilting her head slightly. "Many of our vehicles require pre-qualification. Maybe I can suggest something more suited to your situation before." "Could I suggest something else?" Another employee called out to Brittany, who looked away quickly but went back to watching Snoop as if she feared he was going to touch the cars. "Have you ever wondered how a moment can trigger a lesson? Don't miss the transformation that's about to happen. If this story caught your attention, don't forget to like. Many of our vehicles require pre-qualification. I can suggest something more suited to your situation." Before I could finish, another employee interrupted. He called out to Brittany, and she looked away quickly but went back to watching Snoop as if she feared he was going to touch the cars. "Have you ever wondered how a moment can trigger a lesson? The transformation that's about to happen is not to be missed. If this story caught your attention, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. We'll keep the conversation going." Snoop raised an eyebrow at my situation. Brittany nodded, handing him a printed piece of paper. "Yes, here are the most affordable models." He looked at the paper. The list of vehicles included sedans, an old SUV, and a compact hybrid. All were listed with prices considerably below the vehicles displayed in the showroom. Snoop gave an almost imperceptible smile, but then he folded the paper and put it in his pocket. "I appreciate the effort," he said. Brittany seemed disarmed but quickly recovered her composure. "I'm just trying to be realistic. Motors is not for everyone. I don't want to waste your time." Snoop met her gaze. Her gaze, his expression unchanged. "What exactly makes you think you're not the ideal customer for me?" Brittany hesitated briefly but continued. "I have a lot of experience in this. Realize when someone is out of reach." He repeated this, his tone neutral but loaded with meaning. Brittany took a deep breath, adjusting her posture. "I'm just being honest." It's better to be direct than to cause disappointment. Snoop laughed slightly. Honesty? I like that. How about let me talk to the owner? I think he would like to meet me. Brittany's eyes widened, and for the first time, she looked genuinely surprised. He's not available today for casual visits. He's extremely busy, said Snoop, nodding slightly. But perhaps you can reach him. I'm sure he'll want to know that I'm here. Brittany's smile tightened. She looked clearly irritated. Sir, I'm trying to be as polite as possible, but this is getting out of hand. I have other customers to attend to. If you're really interested in buying, we can arrange a meeting with one of our consultants. Otherwise, what? I'm still calm, but I have an intensity that leaves no doubt. I'm going to ask you to leave, Brittany stated firmly. Snoop remained silent for a moment, his gaze fixed on Brittany. Then, he slowly reached into his pocket for his cell phone. All right, I'm in my pocket, he said, looking for something in the contacts. Make the call. Brittany's face now showed a mixture of confusion and frustration. What are you doing? Are you calling the owner? He replied, lifting the phone to his ear. It won't take long. The surrounding employees stood motionless. Everyone was now paying attention to the scene unfolding. It's me, said Snoop on the phone. I'm at the dealership. Everything is fine. It's just a misunderstanding. Can you let him know I'm here? Snoop ended the call, put his cell phone away, and turned to Brittany. He'll be here soon with serenity. Brittany blinked, her face a question mark. I think we'll find out, he replied. He regarded her with a mysterious expression. Brittany blinked repeatedly, her mouth opening and closing as if searching for the right words. Right. I didn't know. I didn't know what, she interrupted Vincent with a firm tone. His expression was stern, but as he turned to Snoop, he softened. I hope that wasn't the reception you expected. Snoop held up a hand, signaling that he didn't need to apologize. It's okay, Vincent. I think Brittany and I got off on the wrong foot. Your tone was quiet, but the weight of the words hung in the air, filling every corner of the room. Brittany's face turned pale, and she held her portfolio against her chest as if it was a lifeline. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, she stammered, her voice almost inaudible. Inaudible. I didn't know what to ask. Snoop's voice was firm but controlled. He was confident that someone like me could own a place like this, that someone like me could belong here. Brittany's eyes widened, and for a moment, she looked completely lost. I didn't mean it, Snoop said, interrupting. But tell me something. If I wasn't the owner, would you have treated me differently? Would you have received the same respect you would to someone in a suit and tie? Brittany opened her mouth to reply, but the words didn't come out. The silence was deafening. Snoop nodded slightly, as if he already had an answer ready. He turned to Vincent and spoke with authority. Vincent, unite everyone in the conference room. We need to talk about how things are being here. The conference room was an elegant space with walls and modern furniture. Designed to inspire transparency and professionalism, it was the perfect place for serious business. But that day, the atmosphere was heavy. Every employee who entered felt the weight of what was about to happen. Snoop nodded slightly, as if he already had. He turned to Vincent and spoke with authority. Vincent, unite everyone in the conference room. We need to talk about how things are going here. The conference room was an elegant space with walls and modern furniture. Designed to inspire transparency and professionalism, but that day the atmosphere was heavy. Every employee who entered felt the weight of what was about to happen. From Tom, as everyone settled down. Brittany, usually confident, sat in the back, curled up in her chair, her eyes fixed on the portfolio. Snoop, in contrast, stood at the front, his presence dominating the room. Vincent stood by the door, watching in his arms crossed. Snoop cleared his throat. The silence in the room became absolute. "Thank you for coming at such short notice." He began with a tone that was both firm and serene. "For those who don't know me yet, I'm Snoop Dogg, the new owner of Luxury Motors." A murmur of surprise spread through the room as some staff exchanged nervous glances, while others kept their heads down, clearly uncomfortable. Brittany sank further into her chair, avoiding any eye contact. "Today I came dressed casually for a reason." Snoop Dogg, the new owner of Luxury Motors, began with a firm yet calm tone. A murmur of surprise spread through the room as some staff members exchanged nervous glances, while others kept their heads down, clearly uncomfortable. Brittany sank further into her chair, avoiding eye contact. "I wanted to see how this dealership operates when no one knows who I am. I wanted to understand how a customer would feel walking through these doors," he continued. He paused, letting his words resonate. "What I experienced was disappointing. I was judged not by what I could offer, but by my appearance." The tension in the room increased. Some employees exchanged glances, while others stared straight ahead, aware of the seriousness of the situation. "But this isn't just about me," said Snoop, slightly softening his tone. "It's about every person who walks through these doors, every customer, and the preconceived notions about luxury car buyers that plague this industry." From the middle of the room, a young salesman named Chris raised his hand hesitantly. Snoop waved at him, encouraging him to speak up. Chris, nervous, began, "I think most of us try to treat customers fairly." Chris raised his hand hesitantly from the middle of the room. Snoop nodded slowly, his thoughtful expression. "I understand that we all have our prejudices, whether we admit it or not," he continued. "But here's the point, it's not enough to just try to be fair. We need to actively challenge those prejudices. We need to create an environment where everyone feels respected, regardless of their appearance." Snoop nodded, his expression serious. "We all have prejudices, whether we admit it or not. But here's the point, it's not enough to be fair. We must actively challenge those prejudices. We must create an environment where everyone feels respected, regardless of appearance, origin, or anything else." A murmur of agreement ran through the room. A few heads nodded in agreement. "This dealership has built a reputation for excellence," he continued, his voice gaining strength. "But excellence is not just about the cars we sell. It's about the experience we offer. That experience must be based on respect." The room was completely focused. Every employee absorbed the message. Snoop paused, then said, "Brittany, I want to give you something." All eyes turned to her. Brittany hesitated, her breathing visibly heavier. Finally, her voice came out low and shaky. "I made a mistake," she admitted, her cheeks flushing. The room was completely focused on the impact of Snoop's words. Every employee absorbed his message. Snoop paused, then continued, "Brittany, you have something to say. Let me hear it." All eyes turned to her. Brittany hesitated, her breathing visibly heavier. Finally, her voice came out low and shaky. "I made a mistake," she admitted, her cheeks flushing. "I misjudged, and I apologize for that." Snoop watched her for a moment. His expression was serene but implacable. "Thank you for saying that," he replied. "I hope this experience serves as a reminder not only to you, but for all of us. Change begins with responsibility." Turning to the group, he finished. "From now on, we will implement new training programs to ensure that this dealership represents the values in which I believe every customer deserves to be treated with dignity, without exceptions. If anyone has a problem with now, this is the time to speak." The room remained silent. The soft hum of the air conditioner was the only sound. While the weight of Snoop's words hung over everyone, The silence continued to fill the room while Snoop calmly and resolutely took back the word. He said, looking at everyone directly, "I'm glad we're on the same page. I know what we discussed today is difficult, but change is never easy. Change is essential, and this dealership will be an example to follow." He took a step away from the table, resting his hands on the edge while leaning in slightly. "I want something clear. I didn't come here today to embarrass anyone. My goal was to understand the culture inherited and find ways to make it better." His eyes turned to Brittany, who was still at the back, thinking too much. He said, his voice firm, "You're an experienced manager. It's clear that you've worked hard to get here, but what happened today was a wake-up call, not just for you, but for all of us." Brittany looked up, facing Snoop's eyes for the first time since the meeting began. "I understand," she replied in a shaky voice, but it was full of sincerity. "Mistake, and I'll do whatever it takes to make it right." Snoop nodded slightly. "I believe in second chances, but responsibility must come first. We'll have an individual meeting to discuss the next steps. For now, I want everyone to focus their energies on moving forward." He straightened up and turned his attention to the rest of the team. "We don't just sell cars here. We have to sell the idea of a better tomorrow. We build trust, we create relationships, and we represent a standard of excellence. If you are committed to this, I promise I will be there for each of you to support you." A murmur of approval ran through the room. This time, the initial tension seemed to be disappearing. "Mistakes happen. I'll do whatever it takes to make it right." Snoop nodded slightly. "I believe in second chances, but responsibility must come first. We'll have an individual meeting to discuss the next steps. For now, I want everyone to focus their energies on moving forward." He straightened up and turned his attention to the rest of the team. "We don't just sell cars here. We build trust, we create relationships, and we represent a standard of excellence. We build trust, we create relationships, and we represent a standard of excellence. If you are committed to this, I promise I will be there for each of you to support you." A murmur of approval ran through the room. This time, the initial tension disappeared, replaced by a sense of purpose. Even Vincent, who had remained silent by the door, smiled slightly and nodded in agreement. Snoop's face also showed a small but significant expression of satisfaction. He said, his tone lighter, "Let's get back to work and remember the way we treat people. People matter more than anything. Anything we sell." As the employees began to leave the room, Snoop noticed that Brittany was left behind. She hesitated for a moment before approaching him, her hands intertwined, a reflection of her "Senior dog," she began in a low voice, almost a whisper. "Thank you for the opportunity. I won't let you down." Snoop watched her, unperturbed, but understanding. "I hope you're serious, Brittany. Actions speak louder than words." "I'm all in," Snoop said, his tone direct. "I believe in people's ability to change if they're committed." Later that day, Snoop strode through the showroom, examining every detail meticulously. The cars shone under the lights, their surfaces reflecting the late afternoon light. This time, the glow symbolized something deeper, a new beginning. "What's next?" Vincent asked, his voice assertive. Snoop said with conviction, "I'm going to have a meeting with the whole team. I want everyone to understand exactly what I expect of them from now on." "Consider it done," Vincent replied with a slight nod. Snoop nodded and started to walk away, but before leaving, Snoop was determined as he met with the whole team. "Consider it done," he said with a slight nod. He took one last look at the showroom. This was no longer just a place to sell luxury cars. It was an opportunity to create something, a space where people were valued for who they really were. A few days later, Snoop returned to the showroom. He noticed something different immediately. Brittany was at the entrance serving a customer. The man was young, an artist, dressed simply with worn jeans and an ink-stained shirt. His casual appearance was a reflection of how Snoop had arrived that first day, but this time BR's attitude was different. Relaxed, smiling genuinely, and listening attentively as the customer explained what he needed. There was no judgment, just a sincere effort to help. Snoop paused for a moment, watching from afar. Snoop's casual appearance reflected his relaxed state, but his demeanor conveyed a clear intention. He was genuinely attentive, smiling, and focused on the customer's needs. There was no judgment, just a sincere effort to help. This small moment symbolized the change he envisioned for luxury motors. Silence dominated the conference room when Snoop spoke again. His voice was calm but firm and full of determination. "Very well," he said, pausing before continuing. "It's good to see that we are all aligned. I know changes are not easy, but they are necessary, and this dealership will be an example to everyone." He took a step away from the table. This small moment symbolized the change he wanted for luxury motors. Silence still dominated the conference room when Snoop spoke again. His voice was calm, but firm and full of determination. "It's good to see that we are all aligned," he said. "I know changes are not easy, but they are necessary, and this dealership will be an example to everyone." He took a step away from the table, resting his hands on its edge as he leaned slightly forward. "I want to make something clear," he continued. "I didn't come here today to humiliate anyone. My goal was to understand the culture I inherited and find ways to make it better." His eyes traveled around the room before fixed on Brittany. He confidently sat in the chair, his voice firm. "You are an experienced manager. I can see that you've worked hard to get where you are. But what happened today was a wake-up call, both for you and for all of us." He turned to Brittany, who sat in the background, visibly more introspective than ever. "I want to be clear, I didn't come here today to humiliate anyone. My goal was to understand the culture I inherited and find ways to make it better." His eyes traveled around the room before fixed on Brittany. "You are an experienced manager. I can see that you've worked hard to get where you are. But what happened today was a wake-up call, both for you and for all of us." He turned to Snoop, his voice firm. "You are an experienced manager. I can see that you've worked hard to get where you are. But what happened today was a wake-up call, both for you and for all of us." Her voice was low but full of sincerity. "I was wrong, and I will do whatever it takes to make it right." Snoop nodded slightly. "I believe in second chances," he said calmly. "But responsibility is responsibility. Individually, we need to discuss the next steps. For now, I want all of us to focus on moving forward and straightening up." He turned his attention to the rest of the group. "We're not just selling cars," he said. Her voice was low and sincere. "I was wrong, and I will do whatever it takes to make it right." Snoop nodded slightly. "I believe in second chances," he said calmly. "But responsibility is responsibility. Individually, we need to discuss the next steps. For now, I want all of us to focus on moving forward and straightening up." He turned his attention to the rest of the group. "We're not just selling cars," he said. "We're building trust, creating relationships, and representing a standard of excellence. If you are committed to this, I will be by your side every step of the way." The murmur of approval grew louder and louder, and genuine. The tension that had filled the space before seemed to be dissipating. "We're building trust, creating relationships, and setting a standard of excellence. If you're committed to this, I'll be by your side every step of the way." This time, the murmur of approval grew louder and louder, and the tension that had filled the space before dissipated, giving way to a renewed sense of purpose. Vincent, who remained quiet by the door, nodded in approval. Snoop smiled, reflecting both relief and determination. Then he said with a lighter tone but still resolute, "Let's get back to work and remember that the way we treat people matters more than anything we sell." As the employees began to leave the room, Snoop noticed that Brittany was hesitantly standing near the door. She stepped forward. With a determined expression, Vincent nodded in approval. Snoop smiled, reflecting both relief and determination. Then he said firmly, "Let's get back to work and remember that the way we treat people is more important than anything we sell." As the employees began to leave the room, Snoop noticed Brittany hesitantly standing near the door. She stepped forward, her fingers intertwined in a nervous gesture. "Señor Dog," she began in a low, almost shy voice, "I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to improve. I promise I won't let you down." Snoop watched her for a moment. His expression was impassive but full of meaning. "I hope," Brittany answered him firmly but without harshness. "Actions always speak louder than words. But I believe that people can change if they really want to." She quickly felt her eyes light up with genuine determination. "I'm ready, sir." Hours later, Snoop left again for the showroom. He watched the cars glistening under the lights, but this time the glow seemed to symbolize something deeper, a new direction, a new beginning. Vincent approached with a smile that reflected, "What's the next step, boss?" Snoop announced that he would be organizing a meeting with the whole team the following week. His tone was clear and decisive. "I want everyone to understand exactly what I expect of them from now on." "Consider it done," Vincent replied with a firm nod. Snoop nodded in agreement, took one last look around the showroom, and then left. The showroom was just a place to sell luxury to him. It was an opportunity to create something bigger. He wanted to create a place where people were valued for who they are, not for what they look like. Days later, Snoop returned to the showroom and found a scene that made him stop for a moment. Near the Brittany was attending to a young man with simple clothes, worn jeans, and a paint-stained t-shirt. His appearance was a reflection of how Snoop had arrived that initial day, but Brittany's attitude was completely different. She was different. She listened attentively, smiling genuinely as she asked questions that showed interest. There was no judgment in her, she was simply trying to help. Snoop stood there watching from afar. This small moment symbolized the beginning of the transformation he envisioned for luxury motorcycles. It was a sign that change was possible. A culture based on respect and inclusion was starting to take root. There was still a lot of work to be done, but Snoop knew they were on the right track. Thank you for watching this about respect and change. If you identified with this message, don't forget to like and subscribe for more impactful stories and share your thoughts in the comments. Together, we can build a community